I think this is probably worth actually having a recorded thing. Also, yeah, No Kings did have a lot of the country out, but I agree with you. No Kings did not do a lot, aside from bring a decent bit of the country together for a little bit, but ultimately that wasn't enough. Said political theory requires 11% in order to work. So when you say political theory, you need to be willing to say which political theory. I'll say this. 11% is a number I have not seen cited before. I'm familiar with the 3.5% rule, which is the poli-sci rule from Erica Chenoweth, the one that says that if at least 3.5% of a population is involved in a protest, then typically regime change happens. Like that's the argument that she makes. Now, whether or not that holds true is in doubt. There's a lot of scrutiny that she has had for that opinion from her peers. So I understand that is not a great measure of anything. Allow me to give you my counter. Aside from the fact that we did meet the 3.5% rule, because we got 5%. Says she's later been heavily scrutinized in the literature since. As I said, there is a level of scrutiny that is aimed at her for that opinion. I'm not going to assume that it's right. I'm not going to assume that it's wrong right now. What I will say is that in my experience, we can look at numbers all day, or we can look at things people are doing. Numbers are great. Numbers give us a lot of information, but there are real people in places like Progressive Victory who have made strides in getting people elected. There are people who have made strides in getting people elected in the DSA. We have an out-and-out socialist as mayor of fucking New York. We have an out-and-out socialist in a position of power in Georgia that the DSA got through. That doesn't happen randomly. Is it also Seattle and Boston? That doesn't happen at random. That happens because of effort. That happens because people are willing to put in the effort. People will never be willing to put in the effort if they do not think that there is something worth putting the effort in for. Decision theory time. Wait, who's the Georgian socialist? Gabriel. Gabriel's the one that we got in. I say we, but DSA at large, I'm not a member of any of the DSAs. Mostly due to time constraints. Yeah, Gabriel's the one that we've got in from the DSA. Let's do decision theory for a second. Scenario 1. You do nothing. You let Doomerism do its thing. What happens to the country? Falls into despair. Nothing good happens. We're all fucked. Woohoo. Scenario 2. You put in the work. You don't fall into despair. You do what you can politically as you can. And as a result, nothing happens. Country still falls into despair. Okay, that sucks. That's not great. It's really not great. But it's no different than the previous scenario, outside of the amount of effort you put in. But putting more effort into a thing should not be enough of a reason not to do something. Here's the next scenario. You're a doomer, and everything changes for the better. But it changes for the better not because you did anything to change it. So whether or not it would change and become a better scenario was completely unaffected by any decision you made. So at this point, the scenario that we are looking at is one where my character dies. The scenario we're looking at is one where you didn't do anything to move the needle, and in fact might have actually contributed to moving the needle against any movement that could have made things better. But it won in spite of you. That's good for us, like ontologically, but it ain't great in terms of what effort was done where. Here's scenario 4. You don't let yourself fall into doomerism, and you do try to do something. Or at the very least, do nothing. If you do nothing, you have a neutral effect on politics, and you did not make it worse, but you did not make it better. But on the other end, if you actually did put in effort and maybe got somebody elected in your local area, cool. If you are willing to do that, if you are willing to push for that, and you move the needle even by a percentage point, you have done more good than either of the doomer positions. You've done more good than the neutral position. As far as I'm concerned, the math works out in almost every scenario that doomerism doesn't help you. Per decision theory, it at best does nothing, and at worst makes things worse. Whereas if you hold on to hope and use it as a tool, you at worst don't affect things, and at best help make them better. Ignore any other political theory shit. Ignore socialism, ignore capitalism, ignore all of it. Ignore any bit of it. That's what you get. Your doomerism will always produce neutral to negative results. Your hope will always produce neutral to positive results. One of these perspectives is useless as a result. German Cow says it should be kept in mind we didn't arrive here overnight either, but over the course of decades, of generations. If it takes that long to claw back, even if we never see any results, I can live with that. Right, that's another thing. The reason that we got here was because of a bunch of liberals and even leftists who felt disenfranchised in voting, who felt disenfranchised in their country and therefore did not enter the electoral process, didn't do anything to substantially change it, just let it continue going on as normal. At minimum, or worse. And then Republicans, who did the opposite of, at minimum, bemoaning the system and not doing anything, but at most, doing everything in their power to get their people in office, spending money, doing donations, doing fucking everything. Said it's hard not to feel a little doomer when it's happening. Yeah, I understand the feeling. I do. But I think externalizing it is worthless. I think externalizing it does nothing but make you feel worse and make everybody around you feel useless. And I think I've got the literal math to back it up. I am comfortable if when I die, at worst, I didn't affect the world around me enough. I am comfortable with that. That does not bother me at all. I moved the needle by a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent, but I moved the needle. I know I've already done it. I got a trans girl out of the United States, and with a happier family, off of homelessness. At bare minimum, I did that. At bare minimum, I have been involved in the videography of a politician who was running against Marjorie Taylor Greene. That didn't amount to anything because Sean Harris is the one who ended up going up against her, but I did. I put in an amount of effort. And that's not to say the things that I've done on my own channel. At minimum, hope gets you no results. At maximum, hope gets you a lot of results. At minimum, doomerism gives you no results. At maximism, doomerism makes everything worse. I like the math the other way around. I like the math a whole lot better when the chance of winning is there. I don't see a use for the other side of that mathematical equation. I don't. If you ignore every single bit of political theory, you have that. You have that still. And I think that's fine. Justice in your district still shifted like 28 or 25 or 28 points. Yeah, Sean Harris managed against Fuller like 42% of the vote, something like that, which is way higher than even he managed the last time against Marjorie, which is kind of nuts. So it feels like Helldiver levels of progress. I don't know. That's my take. That's my perspective. That's why I mean what I say when I say I don't have a use for doomerism. As far as the math breaks down in my head, there isn't a scenario where the math favors it. Ever. And that may seem like a cold way to look at it, but it's an honest way to look at it. I'm not saying that being a doomer is invalid. Your feelings are perfectly valid. What you do with those feelings is the thing that matters infinitely more than how you feel them. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitt, you know I'm not saying that last part, Sylvie Snow, Valis of Seraph, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.